The Asia Cup is a tournament played roughly every couple of years. But unlike another cricket trophy that is contested just about as often, the Asia Cup lets more than 2 historically fancy pants teams attempt to qualify. And I'm talking all sorts of teams. I'm talking Thailand, Iran, Kuwait, Bhutan, Wu-Tang, Himalaya, the Maldives. One of those is a rap group, another is a moon of Jupiter, but you get the general gist. The Asia Cup is a big tent. And if you're part of this continent, you get to try and qualify, baby.
But it's not all biryani and rose water. Sure, playing the Asia Cup has become a no-brainer for the big Asian boards so that their sides can prepare for upcoming ICC tournaments, but in the last 10 years or so, some serious cricketing rivalries have popped up among the bigger Asian nations.
What up? I'm Fidel Fernando, one of the lead writers at ESPN Cricinfo, and guy who once pitched a video series to his editors just so it would seem like I had content ideas, but who has now been asked to go ahead and make the series myself. Welcome to The Plunge. Now, you can't start a video about Asia Cup rivalries without talking about the big nuclear one. India v Pakistan is one of the most tense sporting rivalries anywhere ever. The roots of this go back to the decades before independence, and I don't want to blame everything on British colonialism, but I think it's fair to say that those guys definitely did not help.
From a cricketing perspective, the India-Pakistan rivalry is absolutely one of the most storied. Just in the last 40 years, we've had so many iconic passages of play. There was Javed Miandad's last ball 6 to win a match in Sharjah, Anil Kumble's 10-wicket haul in Delhi, Shoaib Akhtar plain old physically abusing Rahul Dravid's, then Sachin Tendulkar's stumps with consecutive in-swinging Yorkers, also Srisant getting under Misbah-ul Haq's scoop shot, Tendulkar's ridiculous 6 off Shoaib in 2003, Shahid Afridi hitting this 6, Virat Kohli hitting this 6, and although very few of these actually happen in the Asia Cup, that doesn't really matter because they all feed into the lore.
It's a tornado of history, culture, and politics, in which the players are often just props in this hugely profitable drama. In fact, the current lot of India and Pakistan players seem to kind of like each other. Now, the broadcasters have all but ensured that India and Pakistan play at least 2 matches in this tournament and pray to all of the gods of capitalism that India and Pakistan play the final as well, except that they kind of have to accept as a conceit that a team called, I don't know, Sri Lanka might just rock up and win the tournament like they did last year and a full 5 times before that. As we approach the 2023 version of the Asia Cup, some of the India-Pakistan rivalries have been on display once again. Now, this tournament was supposed to be hosted in its entirety by Pakistan, but India have refused to travel there based on political tensions, which kind of mirrors what happened in 2018, where India was supposed to host the Asia Cup, but Pakistan didn't want to travel there, and the whole thing was hosted in the UAE. Now, what has happened in the final wash-up is that this stadium that I'm sitting in right now will end up hosting more matches than the entire country of Pakistan. A lot of that is to be expected, but when the PCB went to announce the schedule of a tournament they are nominally hosting, Jay Shah stole the thunder from under their feet by tweeting the schedule just moments before the Pakistan board was supposed to go live with it. Now, I don't want to be too critical of the BCCI, but in a tournament that is supposed to foreground regional cooperation, this is just the kind of egotistical, and I find that completely appalling. On my first shoot for The Plunge, I had no idea video work would be this glamorous. Now, the India-Pakistan rivalry is not the only one over which the India-Pakistan geopolitical situation casts its long shadow. Over the last few years, the Afghanistan-Pakistan rivalry has also acquired some serious edge. And although these teams have only played 10 matches against each other ever, at least 3 of those have seen serious crowd violence. Now, I know that it may seem insensitive that I'm talking about crowd violence while surrounded by some of the greatest victims of crowd violence, stadium seats, but I promise I paid my respects. I didn't realize that rollers made noise as they reversed, you know, like trucks beeping, until this guy started messing up our shot like every 2 minutes. But to understand why so many stadium seats have had to be sacrificed for this Pakistan-Afghanistan rivalry, you have to go into the history of it. Because in the past, relationship between the PCB and the Afghanistan Cricket Board has been good, even warm.
The root of it, as usual, is a border drawn fairly arbitrarily and carelessly to separate the British Raj and the Emirate of Afghanistan way back in 1893. As with many of the borders drawn by the British, the issue here is that it split a cultural grouping in half, and so the Pashtuns found themselves suddenly living either side of what has remained a pretty porous border. What all this means for the 21st century is that the likes of Rashid Khan, Afghanistan's greatest cricketer so far, learned the game in Pakistan and spent many of his formative years there, as did many of the other players who powered Afghanistan's meteoric rise as a cricketing nation. In the first half of the last decade, the PCB worked closely with the Afghanistan Cricket Board to the extent that the relationship was formalized by a Memorandum of Understanding in 2013, and at the time this kind of seemed like one of the most organic instances of an established test nation helping a developing side.
So I don't know if you can hear, but there's an azan going from the mosque over here. There's Gatha coming out of the Buddhist temple over here. I'm sure there's some Catholic church in the distance also sending up some hymns on loudspeakers. And this is why religions are equal, because they're all equally messing up this show. Occasionally the fights in the stands just start because too many people have snuck into the stands and they can't find seating or even standing space. And although in this Asia Cup, Pakistan and Afghanistan may not meet at all, they start in different starting groups and have to make it through into the Super Fours in order to have an encounter against each other. Let's hope, whatever happens, that these guys remain safe. And now we come to Sri Lanka v Bangladesh, which is the one where, especially in this stadium, a lot of people have done this. The Nagin celebration apparently started in one BPL season when Darren Sammy told left-arm spinner Nazmul Islam that he was kind of like a snake, probably as a compliment. And Nazmul started doing the Nagin celebration every time he took a wicket. Nothing unusual about that. Plenty of bowlers do wicket celebrations.
But when Sri Lanka toured Bangladesh in 2018 and Nazmul celebrated in his new trademark style, one Sri Lanka player started mimicking Nazmul Islam's celebration after he himself took a wicket. That player is Danush Gunathilaka, whose actions, I think it's fair to say, tend to cause more strife than they're worth. And in any case, Mushfiqur Rahim didn't like that a teammate celebration was being mocked in this way, and his way of retaliating was to do a mock Nagin celebration at Gunathilaka after he played a match-winning innings in the Hutch Trophy later that year. This was the moment at which Nazmul Islam's innocent celebration became an artifact of battle between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh. The Sri Lanka team started doing it when they won, the Bangladesh team started doing it when they won, the fans from either side started doing it whenever their team was doing well. None of this was helped, by the way, by the fact that one of the Bangladesh team members shattered this glass door in a Colombo stadium after a hugely controversial match that featured a lot of gesticulating outside the boundary by Shakib Al Hassam. And while the mocking Nagin celebrations have been a feature of Sri Lanka-Bangladesh matches since, it's important to point out that there is no geopolitical angst underpinning this. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh do not have beef on a national level.
Now I know what you're thinking. It can't be that superficial, right? It can't quite be that stupid. But it is that stupid. And if you think it sucks for you to have had to listen to that over the last few minutes, think about me, who has had to watch these Nagin exchanges between these two teams for work and report on them. Then I've had to research it and write a script for this video. And I've had to come to this stadium, which is quite far from my house, to present it. And it's taken me like several takes to get it right. But I guess this is my life. Surangani, Surangani, Lajjanat me pare andani. There are other rivalries, of course, but some of these tend to be so one-sided that you kind of wonder if there's that much sting to them at all. And probably the most notable of these is Bangladesh v India. The big flashpoint there being that 2016 T20 World Cup game where Mushfiqur Rahim gets in the face of Hardik Pandya, the bowler, and celebrates a boundary in the final over in pretty extravagant fashion. Bangladesh at that point just needed 2 of 3 balls to win, but end up pulling off one of the all-time insane chokes.
Since then, there have been other traumatic defeats for Bangladesh, such as in that Nidahas Trophy final when Dinesh Karthik smashed 29 off 8 balls to blast India across the line in a match they probably should not have won. Now I live, like all human beings should, in fear of being hounded down by Bangladesh fans who feel their team's achievements have not been adequately acknowledged. But I also have to mention that Bangladesh are 5 for 25 against India across formats in the last 10 years, and 4 of those 5 wins have come in Mirpur, and I don't write the stats.
The other potential rivalry is Sri Lanka v India, which was kind of a thing in the early 2010s when these teams were visiting each other every alternate weekend like each other's stepchildren, and Sri Lanka fans kind of liked to hate India at the time. But then over the last decade, India has won 18 of the last 22 ODIs, and you know what? I don't really want to talk about it. Let's cut the scene there. So we've talked a lot about regional angst in this video, but I wanted to end on friendship and love. Asian relations don't have to be about contention, folks, especially when it comes to cricket. It can be like Sri Lanka, Pakistan.
We know roughly when the loving started. That was back in 1996 when Sri Lanka played a World Cup final in Lahore and most Lahoris turned up in support of Sri Lanka, who of course won that final. But there's been more two-way love since then. In 2009, Sri Lanka with the team attacked, also in Lahore, but despite that, 10 years later, Sri Lanka were among the first teams to visit for a test tour. They played incredible matches and had some of the most dramatic finishes of the last 10 years, but importantly, the fans have never stopped being good to each other. Pakistan knocked Sri Lanka out of the 2017 Champions Trophy in Cardiff, but then Pakistani fans were grooving to Lankan baila beats outside the stadium as the Lankan fans danced with them. Maybe it's about shared instability. Sri Lanka doesn't quite have Pakistan's scale, but it's hard to argue that Sri Lanka cricket isn't as crazy. One side tends to deal in mystery spinners and the other in fast bowlers, but there are a lot of common quirks and strangenesses here.
Is it a perfect friendship? Of course not. In 2014, when Pakistan were chasing a manic 5th-day victory in Sharjah, Sri Lanka tried all sorts of insane delaying tactics to try and prevent that win. A few years later, Ahmed Shahzad and TM Dilshan were walking off the field and Shahzad delivered a pretty brutal theological sermon, and there have been plenty of on-field altercations between these two teams over the years, and still, for all of that, this is as non-toxic a cricketing relationship as you will find anywhere in the world. And isn't this holding up of each other, this treasuring of cultural touchstones and valuing our shared geographical space, what the Asia Cup is supposed to be all about? Or maybe it's all about money.